Hello, my name is Ada, and today I'll be sharing with you from the Word of God. Okay, we're continuing from the book of Galatians, chapter 2, and from verse 7 says, But on the contrary, they saw that I had been entrusted with the gospel to the uncircumcised Gentiles, just as Peter had been entrusted to proclaim the gospel to the circumcised, that is, the Jews. For he who worked effectively for Peter and empowered him in his ministry to the Jews also worked effectively for me and empowered me in my ministry to the Gentiles. And recognizing the grace that God had bestowed on me, James and Cephas, Peter, and John, who were reputed to be pillars of the Jerusalem church, gave to me and Barnabas the right hand of fellowship, so that we could go to the Gentiles with their blessings, and they to the circumcised Jews. They asked only one thing, that we remember the poor, the very thing I was also eager to do. When I read this, you know, I remember the message I heard from, Pastor Paul Enenche. He was talking about bees. And, I looked into it and found that in this kingdom, in this work that God has called us to do, it's like a beehive. Each bee is specialized to what it's supposed to be. You have the worker bees, you have the queen bee, you have the drones. Everyone has his part to play. Everyone concentrates on doing their part. Some go and find the pollen, some go and find, everything that they need for the hive to move on. And the survival of the hive depends on everyone doing their part. It depends on the queen just laying there and bearing those eggs. Depends on the drone making sure those eggs are fertilized. It depends on the workers making sure they go out, find food, and bring it back. Those that are fanning the hive, to make sure it's air conditioned with their wings. Those ones, their job is important. Those ones that feed the eggs, that grow into new bees, their job is important. Everybody has their own part to play. And here, see, Paul says they recognized that, yes, just as God has, anointed Peter to preach to the Jews, God had also anointed me to preach to the Gentiles, and they had no problem with it. Instead, they blessed me to continue in my work. Everyone has a part to play. Everyone has an audience. Peter's audience were the Jews, and Paul's audience were the Gentiles. And if Peter said, hey, after all, I was the first one to preach to the Gentiles, was I not the one that preached to Cornelius? He was a Gentile, so I should be the one preaching to everybody, both Jews and Gentiles. No, it would have overworked him. He would have been burnt out, because that's not his calling. He was supposed to focus on the Jews, and Paul was focused on the Gentiles. And with both of them doing their job, the gospel was spreading. It was efficient, like we've spoken about in some other videos. Efficiency is something that God works with. God is a good businessman. God works with efficiency. So what has God called you to do in his kingdom? Do it. Focus on it. Don't sit around and wish you were doing the other person's job, or wish you were doing the other person's part. Because if everyone in the beehive decided, the queen bee is just laying there, and other people just cleaning her up, and she's just laying the eggs, we want to be queen bees too. Who's gonna take care of the hive? Who's gonna feed the queen bee? Everybody's gonna lay there, and everybody's gonna die of hunger. But if everybody did their part, if everybody focused on the audience that God had given them. What is your audience? Your audience could be children. Your audience could be teenagers. Your audience could be, prisoners. Who is your audience? Find your audience and focus on them. Find your audience and, the people that God has prepared you for. It's very important to know where God has specialized you for, what God has gifted you for, what God has prepared you for. If every one of us will be doing what God has called us to do, in the place God has called us to do it, and not get jealous of the other person, oh, I'm all here, nobody notices me, blah, 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 blah. And meanwhile, this person in the choir is all there up there, everybody's hey, praising them. And is that what God has called you to do? You see, God's praise is more important than the praise of man. What God thinks is more important. He is the master. He is the one that's going to reward us at the end of the day. If you're seeking a reward, you're seeking to be rewarded by, men's praises, you're going to miss out. And the thing is that men's praises, they're fickle. Today they're praising you. Tomorrow make one mistake, one little mistake, and you'll be wondering, wait, what happened? Where's everybody? They all disappear, and you become the devil himself. Just one mistake. So don't depend on the praises of men. Focus on what God has called you to do. Focus on His purpose for you. Who is your audience? Focus on your audience. Do that with your audience. How do you reach your audience? Learn it. Prepare yourself. Make yourself better and focus. Be the best you that you can be. Be the best of what God has called you to do. Be the best. So I hope this has blessed you, and I hope you go back and study the word. It's very important, especially at these times when there's a lot of confusion out there. We need to go back to the word. We need to go back to studying to know exactly what God is saying. And I pray that God blesses you and that you have a wonderful week. Please like this video, share, subscribe, and have a wonderful day. Bye.